So I just laid out these carving knives here. They sort of start right over here, this end being my favorite and most used, all the way down to either really specialty, like oddball uses, or something I find useful but not so often. So I do most of my carving with this. Good at stock removal. It's probably the most effective design, flat bevel. It's getting worn out, I need to replace the blade. All these I replaced the blade, I just sharpened them out of existence. This is my primary scraper, end grain and incising lettering and stuff. This one is similar, but more lettering and not as much end grain. This is a crooked knife. It took about 4 knives before I actually made one that was successful at the intended purpose. I just saw pictures. I never actually used one or held one, so that was hard. This is a single bevel, kind of like carpentry knife. Super powerful at pulling off the chips. This is just like a general spoon gouge. This is a really general purpose whittling knife. I like it quite a lot. This one is the same. I actually made one I liked a lot better, but I don't have it anymore. This one's kind of a thin-bladed, finer whittling, chip carving type design. This one is designed for comfortably removing curls of wood, like say if you're doing like a tool handle, like a hoe or well, very general carving, but you know, if you're doing handles and stuff. This one was made as a pair, a right and left-handed flat ground. And they're flat on that side. That blade there, probably you can't see that very well, but this blade used to look like that. I don't recommend making one just like this. Make it like that, because this round part greatly facilitates getting in there and pulling off a bigger chip. That one's got a curve to it, which does the same thing. You kind of put less pounds per square inch behind pulling a chip off. These are also curved. You're not trying to take the entire chip off in one pull. You can take a fine one or a big one depending on the context. All my handles are ergonomically designed to be comfortable doing the job they were intended to do. This is a spoon carving Scorp. I copied the design. Unfortunately, I can't remember his name. The guy from Zed Outdoors did a spoon carving tutorial on this guy. I do like the design, and I was wanting to make a Scorp. I made my buddy a Scorp to do the inside of drums he was making, and I liked it, but I didn't make much of that, so like I didn't make drums, so I didn't make one. This reminds me of a flensing knife, and it's got a whalebone handle. Anyway, I use it for carving or making cedar bark strips. It was intended to do like lettering and chips where you can change the angle. like it. This was one of my first knives, and so the ergonomics of this section here are not impressive. I'd like to make another one. Oh gosh, I forgot all my sickles. Gosh, there's quite a few of those. Yeah, this is a general purpose whittling knife. Homely looking sucker, but it works really well. And this one is like a chip carving. It's good at whittling. It's got a real powerful handhold, so you can really get the force on there. Sharpening box and just a string winder. This is the ads I made. The handle's kind of ugly and weird looking, but it's superb at what it does. It's crabapple. I would have replaced it many years ago, except that I don't have hardwood species like ash or maple or like black locust. With a nice crook like that, I would absolutely go for that in a heartbeat and make a new one. I just don't have the wood in my area. I'm on coastal BC, so it's mostly softwoods or brittle hardwoods. This is a draw knife I cut from like a radial lumber saw, circular saw blade. Really like that pattern. It's probably the best pattern I've used. The handles being at this angle mean that you're not squeezing the handle. Like if you're squeezing a handle and trying to pull through the chips, it fatigues your hand really bad. So this allows you to just light friction on the handle will give you a really good lock on the tool, and you can pull as hard as you want. Of course, you can use both sides depending on the situation. Really happy with this one. Highly recommend you copy that pattern. There's a lot of funky ones out there I don't like. This was a machete, as its predominant usage, with the idea that it would make a good self-defense tool as well. Also one of my oldest blades. These two are from the same era. That's not a carving tool, boys. So that's the right and left hand combination. While we're on the subject of daggers and whatnot, this is intended for stabbing and slicing with a very powerful grip. Actually, I learned this pattern from a dream I had. Killed a couple ogres. Nasty. It's a good eating knife and excellent daily carry in the city. Couldn't tell you how many tubs of yogurt I ate with that thing. Oh, this is my all-time best hunting knife, bar none. I've filleted hundreds of rockfish, many deer. That's what I do all the quartering and deboning with, and skinning off, taking the hide off. This is a companion. That's the sheath that holds both blades plus a sharpening, and it has two methods of carry, one through the belt, the other as a dangler for when you're in camp. Kicks out of the way really nice. All my sheaths have either a wood or metal insert, so if you fall on them you can't possibly puncture them. So this is the gutting, skinning, and paring knife and fire starting knife. Like as a trapping knife, I'd say it was a complete success. As my go-to bushcraft knife, this one is far superior. This is round, and this has a flat section, so the flat section engages the wood and you get a really powerful cut. This one kind of pushes the wood away and you dissipate some of your energy, which is bad. And primarily in a bushcraft hunting situation, like hunting, you spend 15 minutes gutting a deer, and you spend at least that long making fuzz sticks and whittling and food. So I would say if you're taking a knife hunting, go with something you can cut wood with. Hunting is a secondary thing. I also made a tiny little gut hook for unzipping the skin, which I really like. Okay, so that's my gutting hook. I consider a gutting hook entirely frivolous, although they save a lot of time. I would never put one on the end of a knife. It's a complete waste of space and it hinders all kinds of things. So I made this one, which is very light. And that's how I use it. Gosh, you save a lot of time on a deer doing it that way. Just as an addition, I feel I'd be negligent if I didn't give a very honorable mention to this tool. So when you're carving and doing moderate stock removal, like not using a big axe and a saw, these two tools are about the same weight, and this one you hew on the side, this one you hew on the face. This one's way more accurate for some types of carving. That's kind of a subject on its own. I had to modify the handle. I'm really not all that happy with the handle, but the blade is superb. Quality of steel is great. It's a Grant's Forest Brooks. Can't remember it's like their smallest version. If you're into carving, absolutely worth the price. I just don't have the capability to make that particular shape. Some other things that deserve a really good mention that I didn't make myself. I made the sheath, the handle. I modified the saw blade. It was a pruning blade. There was a bill hook on here and a hook here, and I just cut a tang in there and pinned it on the handle. Awesome tool. Make one. I probably made this one 15 years before that one. Also a Lee Valley blade. I broke the end off like, I don't know, a dozen years after I made it. This is a cherry crook. This is also a cherry sheath. I had a leather carrying strap on there. Impulse hardened teeth, but you can sharpen those with a diamond stone. So I added this leather to the tomahawk. This is made by Two Hawks. Guy in the States makes these. In my opinion, it's probably the best one out there. I don't really have any complaints about it. I had to recarve the handle. I didn't like this teardrop point on it. And I also didn't like the texture of the wood, so I roughed it up. And because this is a cone in the wrong direction, your hand wants to slip off when it jars. So I would consider a leather handle mandatory. I also will put a blade protector up here. I don't really like them for comfort and use and stuff. Sorry dude, don't like logos. It's a good logo though. I would thicken the cheeks up here a little. And to save that weight that you put on here, I would take the pole down maybe an eighth. And then I would consider that to be absolutely perfect without any flaws. but it's really close and better than I can make, so what can you do? Also, I didn't make that blade. I'm embarrassed to say. I'd have loved it if I did. I made the handle. Handles they come with suck. I made the brass washer and painted over. I also made the sheath, and I made this little blade, the maple handle, as a companion blade. So there's a diamond stone in here. The blade goes in there. The secondary blade goes in here. Shoulder strap, leg tie down, and a belt loop. That's my go-to knife for 3 seasons, except when I'm really chopping wood in the winter, and I always take it hunting. It's the best for hunting. So we'll get on to the specifically general purpose bushcraft knife. Everybody and their dog's got their favorite one. I'm not here to tell you what you should like and what you shouldn't like, but I'll tell you what I like and don't like, and just a bit of why I made them. This was one of my first knives, and the blade was at least out to there, probably 3/16 bigger than it is in all directions. That was a planer blade, chrome vanadium type steel. Oh, that would keep an edge. This was my daily carry for 13 years. That's the sheath. It's typically called a puko, if you're Scandinavian and say that different. Just a white guy here. Canadian white guy. Okay. So this is my modification to the puko sheath. I don't like the seam where they just butt the seam. It rubs up against your leg. So I did a flat stitch, which I really like and would recommend you do that if you're happy throwing in a lot of extra labor. Yeah, so after 13, well, maybe it was 11 years. Anyway, quite a long time. I just sharpened it out of existence, and it's a fat blade. I was no longer getting the type of edge I expect. Yeah, somebody's getting married. Okay, so this is the replacement of that knife. I wanted just a bit bigger blade. Not that I didn't get my use out of that. Like, I skinned out a bear. I couldn't tell you, lots of deer, and fish. Excellent for carving. This little bird's beak helps it get out of the sheath. This one was absolutely a disaster in one-handing it out of the sheath. I cut these fish gills in there to help get it out. Ergonomically, it's supreme. There's no complaints whatsoever in the actual use of this knife as my daily knife. I just can't get it out of the sheath. So I'm in the process of making a new one. So I love the puko. Everybody should own one. This is kind of a replacement of this because it serves a really useful function. I do all my finer detail stuff with that. I would say this pattern, you should make it. You'll be really happy. That's 3/16. Surprisingly agile and sharp for that thickness. Hunting, fishing. I designed it with the ability to make a low angle entry into things that really don't want that blade in there. You know, lots of hunting and whatnot. For rockfish and hunting, it's superb. No complaints there. Haven't thought of anything to improve it. Although since I made it, this was actually a bit thicker. But I was rounding the blade. Well, I had about to here square for the nice clean entry. But then from here out to about here, it was rounded so that it would be very comfortable. I've since made this into a nice ferro rod striking spine. Also, it strips bark, like the cambium layer off sticks and whatnot. This fish shape matches my thumb and helps change the angle. Anyway, I could go on and on with that one, and it's worth it. So this one was an attempt to make one of these that was super abuse tolerant. It's 3/16 as well. Zero complaints with this for most things, but I've come to want a guard, a finger guard like this part on here. I kept that flat and fat as a comfortable. You know, you don't really do that much stabbing with the bushcraft knife. It's only in hunting. So, also this one gives a fine entry. So this was a hunting bushcraft, beat the heck out of it tool. So I'm in the process of making one of these with a guard, and the blade will be a hair longer. This was intended to be your one knife carry in bushcraft as like the camp kitchen, so you can baton it through wood, you can cut your food, and you can cut your fish all with the same knife. Yeah, I like it a lot. There's a couple complaints. These three knives were concept designs, and they weren't perfect. So this one, these two, the blades are almost identical, but in the winter time or when your hands are cold, it's required. Well, it's nice. You know, you wear a glove. You want to be able to put a glove in there and lock it right in there. And if your hands are cold, it's, you know, I rarely cut myself. Like, this design is entirely safe. But if your hands are cold, slippery, and wet, I just wanted a bit of safety. So it was intended as an everyday carry. I wouldn't do this again. I would stick with something like that. But I really like it as a knife. It's a great knife. This was my first design, my first attempt at camp kitchen. You got your sheath knife. So this was a bit of a failed design, except that it's actually an awesome knife. I wanted to have two knives, one on my belt and one in the kitchen box. So it's 1/8 inch, thick enough to baton, etc. I just went with this one because a thin knife is more versatile than having two similar belt type knife ideas. So I'll just show you how this carving roll works. Ready to go. was my second carving tool roll. I kind of like it, except that it's got a pretty low compression rate this way before you start sticking yourself 10 times in a row. I've been working on this one. I still haven't done the strap and the fasteners. It's the sharpening box down there. So this one's got a higher compression from, you know, when you carry your carving tools out to some thoughtful spot and do some whittling. So this is my kitchen knife section. Or knives that are used in the kitchen, even if they've got multiple purposes. So this one, these three here, this one, and this one, they're in my kitchen. That's where they live, and they do everything you need in a kitchen. This one I made before this one, and this one was an improvement on that one. Although I still really like that one and still use it a lot. This one has a thinner blade. Basically what happened is I had a piece of ebony, cast offs from an instrument maker, and a piece of whalebone. And they had a finite length, so that's how long my handle turned out to be. Sort of 3 fingers. So I wanted a longer handle and a thinner blade after I made that, but the blade shape is superb.